You feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at MAYAAkai.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to episode 30 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, the podcast that I like to say looks at to embrace topics about you, getting to that best version of yourself from a salient and fresh forward-thinking perspective. The key thing is about pulling back that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage that often plagues us to get to the core of, what are we missing? Where's that motivation that's going to help us to yield that satisfaction to get to that best version of ourselves every day? I'm going to keep stressing that through the rest of the year. It isn't about the best version of you, this lofty or grandiose idea. It's about the everyday best version of you, and wrapped in that is happiness. And I talk about happiness a lot, and this is why I thought it was really important, at least, to have an episode that really kind of focused on the conversation of happiness, to also put that in perspective and make it an everyday understanding as well. So if you're a first-time listener or viewer, welcome. As I always say, buckle up for safety. Not that, it's going to get, bumpy sometimes, maybe an uncomfortable moment. You might have an aha moment. I may say something and you may go, things that make you go, But it's not the kind of uncomfortable, kind of situation where I think you'll crumble into pieces. But I always, out of fairness, say, I might say something that could strike, a chord with you, and it may resonate and may take you back someplace. I don't know. It's happened with a couple of people that reached out to me and say, you really made me think about this. Can I ask you a question? And of course, if you're a returning listener or viewer, then you know the routine. You don't necessarily have to buckle up for safety, but you do know to have, a pencil, paper, and pens. You could jot down some things, because occasionally I might say something brilliant. As always, I'd like to say, find that comfortable spot so it can be you and me time for the next, 50 minutes. Now, you may be at work, so maybe you can't do that. But either way, have your beverage of choice. For me, it's coffee. I need to be caffeinated today because I'm struggling. I also have some water on the side to not over caffeinate. So whatever it is you use, doesn't matter to me, because it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So you are free to have a glass of wine, because you might be, listening to me like one of my people in Morocco that's listening. It's, it's on the other side of night for you. So either way, do what works for you. Now, we got to do our quick housekeeping items before we jump into episode 30. So, of course, by now, if you listen to M.A.Y.A on a regular basis, we're up to 30 episodes. You can always find all past episodes at M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, at MAYAAkai.com. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, MAYAAkai. I always laugh and say when you subscribe, though, a whole bunch of anime stuff is going to come on, because clearly Akai is Japanese. I am not Japanese, but it's going to pop up. So don't be surprised. Scroll down, and then you'll see my picture. And then that's me, and you can subscribe to my YouTube page. Of course, you may have a podcast platform of choice. I'm going to go with that. So if you happen to like iHeartRadio, let's say iTunes, Google, I'm in Spotify, I'm on Amazon Audibles, you can find M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition there as well. Hopefully by now you have all gotten social with me as well. You follow me on Facebook and Twitter. So Twitter and actually Instagram is Maya_Akai, and Facebook is Maya Akai Presents. So that's all the ways that, you can tune into the show, get past episodes. Remember, we have a rule here that this might be episode 30, but if you're still back in episode 20, that's okay, because some episodes, depending upon what the topic is, it may take you a little bit more time to work your way through it. And I'm okay, because remember, I'm your friendly neighborhood wellness advocate. So I'm always here to help you out, so work at your pace. We're not rushing here, because this is really all about you. The time we spend together is working through those things that you might be struggling with to get to that best version of you and to learn how to harness happiness. So before we jump into episode 30, you know what that means. It's time to bring on board the M.A.Y.A musical muse of the show, Miriam McQueen. How are you, Miriam?
I am the same as you. Coffee.
Miriam and I were just both saying the struggle is real today. Like yesterday was a high energy, great happiness day. I was like a solid 9.5 yesterday. I worked out, got my ass kicked working out. I've been trying to get better sleep patterns. And so I went to bed early. I've been using melatonin and had a whole messed up sleep pattern last night. And I woke up today absolutely like sluggish. And I've been struggling to get my energy all day today.
You know what? When I can't take melatonin. It's too much for me. Like, I just wake up groggy after I take melatonin. I don't know why.
There's different doses of melatonin. It starts at 3, 5, 10. I bought 10, but you can take it like 2, so I could take it in 5. Yeah. it was like the second day I took it. The first day was great. I fell asleep. I didn't wake up as much in the middle of the night. That's my whole purpose for taking it.
Okay.
Being unfortunately that I'm now this very menopausal woman. Fellas, you have your menopause as well. I don't know why women's menopause is called menopause, which is funny to me.
Because don't you menopause?
Right. Why don't we call it womenopause and their menopause? I always found humor in that.
Yeah.
But men also go through that change of life and often have some of the same issues like fatigue, issues with sleep, but people focus more on women than they do on men who have those similar struggles. So I'm only taking it because I'll wake up like 4 times in the middle of the night and I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. But I never wake up tired in the morning. So I was thinking if I took melatonin, maybe I would sleep more. The first night it was great. I slept 4 solid hours and only woke up like once. But then yesterday, I'm not sure what happened.
It was just a weird night. I didn't sleep well either. Yeah. Maybe it's just in the force.
It is. I mean, I'm needing a nap. I don't understand why as children we fought the idea of napping. Napping is the best thing ever invented. And I don't know why as kids we didn't understand the power of a nap.
Yeah. All I want to do is nap. And it makes me sad because I have other things to do that I need to accomplish. And all I want to do is nap all the time.
I know. Well, hey, you know what it is. All right. Well, obviously, we're going to be featuring another song from your EP, Heart of Gold. So we'll see you on the back end of the show.
All right. Bye, Maya.
All right. Go ahead and doze off and take a nap. No. Just kidding. All right. All right, everybody. That is Miriam McQueen. As you know, she is the Maya musical muse on the show. I've now incorporated having live music pieces into my show. And Miriam is obviously the artiste who does that for us. So she'll be on the back end of the show to feature one of her songs from her recently released EP. I want to say maybe 2-3 weeks ago. It's 5 songs. We're featuring the 4th song that's original music off of her EP. So make sure you're here for that. All right. So always you can comment as well when you join the show. So thank you to Nick Paul for joining the show, as well as Byrne, always joining the show. And when you say something, I can actually share your comment on the screen. So obviously if you're just listening, you can't see it, but I'll always read what people say. So if something like, obviously you go, oh God, I get that. Then feel free to comment and I'll share your comments with the viewing or listening audience as well. Okay. So before we jump into episode 30, remember it's toolbox time and you know what that means, that we have to take out our emotional intelligence. And as I refresh, your emotional intelligence is your ability to, perceive, control, and, evaluate emotions. So then you can use them properly opposed to reacting to situations or your emotions. You respond. That's part of the best version of you is learning how to respond to things opposed to react to things. Because as we've learned, when we react to things, guess what? Then we have to go up and clean a mess if we're accountable for our actions. Now you've got some people who react to stuff and they let it sit where it is and they don't care because they're not high in their EI. So emotional intelligence out on the table because it's important. Of course, objectivity and subjectivity, mainly more objectivity is always on the table with us as well because we want to see outside of ourselves objectively opposed to only seeing it in our own kind of way subjectively. So those are the things that are always on the table that you have put in your toolbox through all the episodes of Maya. So make sure you got this out. So it'll be the only toolbox time we have actually during the show. So episode 30. The enigma of the pursuit of happiness. And this came out of me talking, last week about self-efficacy. And one of the hardest things to really probably wrap our minds around truly is the concept of happiness. Happiness is something that we always have in our eyesight. But what does it really entail when it plays out into our everyday lives? Now, I have to be literal. If we were to actually look at the definition of happiness, we went to merriam-webster.com, it would say a state of well-being and contentment. And often it's contextualized as being an emotional or physical state. That's pretty much the basic idea of what happiness is. But let's dig down a little deeper into what really is happiness. What's key to think about with happiness is that there are many facets to happiness. How you feel in the present moment, or more your general sense of feeling about it overall. So that's a thing that I want people to understand about happiness. It's this shifting of emotions and experiences that are never consistent. And if you are a person who probably struggles with the idea of change or challenge, for me to maybe tell you that happiness is something that shifts and change because there's different dimensions to it that we'll get into, might be something that's puzzling to you. Hence, the reason that I decided to put the word enigma into it is because an enigma is something that's mysterious, it's puzzling, and sometimes it's difficult to understand. Hence, the enigma of the pursuit of happiness because of the things that go into it. So before we move any further, I want to share a story about how happiness can kind of just happen and to help you kind of identify moments. I remember way back in the day, my first day in college, like that day going to class. And I remember walking out of my dorm. It's this, it's August. It's the end of, the end of summer. I'm at a Big Ten university. It's lots of people, new experience, away from home, your first big, young adulthood moment. And I remember coming out of the dorm and turning down the street on the side of the dorm as I'm walking to the building where my class is going to be. And here's what happened when I turned the corner, and it stopped me dead in my tracks. And I'll be curious if you would have had the same response. I look up, and this is what I heard.
Sunny day, sweeping the clouds away. On my way to where the air is sweet. Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street? Come and play, everything's A-OK. Friendly neighbors there, that's where we meet. Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street? How to get to Sesame Street? How to get to Sesame Street? How to get to Sesame Street?
So, oddly enough, I stopped dead in my tracks and looked up to the window of the person who had just taken, at that point in time, a boombox. Yeah, I'm aging myself at this point, and had pointed it out the window and just played this song. And guess what? It was a very sunny day. But what was interesting is when I stopped and I looked around, I wasn't the only person who had stopped. There were probably like 20 or more people who had stopped walking and was staring up at this window. And a song for us that's all very nostalgic, but it probably brings back a lot of happy memories and thoughts. That's the essence of happiness. It's the things that experiences, people, places, and things can create these environments and experiences for you that make you feel joy and contentment. But we'll get more into that. But I wanted to share that story because when you're thinking about happiness, especially if you struggled with it, one of the exercises that I'm going to give you is finding those nuggets of happiness that have happened throughout your life. And oddly enough, that paralyzing Sesame Street moment, which I absolutely enjoyed. And you know what? It was weird. I remember walking off and being extremely happy. That song makes me smile because it makes me think of all the positive things in my childhood. So just want to share that story about how happiness kind of manifests itself in ways that we often don't even think of because it's the little things we tend to look by when we think about happiness. So let's talk about the anatomy of happiness because it's interesting. Happiness legitimately would be a balance of emotions. It's that kind of thing that, we all experience. And I want you to know this: positive and negative emotions. We have feelings and moods of happiness that are generally linked to the experiences. Like I talked about that first day in college, turning the corner and someone's playing Sesame Street theme. And instantly I just had a happy moment and it was fulfilling for me. But happiness is more quantified with having more positive than negative experiences. But understand, happiness is something that is not fixed, it is mutable, and it shifts and it changes. And that's where people have to start to understand what happiness is. So you don't start to disregard things in your life because you're confused, because maybe at one moment you have more negative feelings or emotions than you're experiencing positive. It's important to put this in perspective. Hence, this is why EI is really snuggled up close to you right now, that emotional intelligence, because when you can begin to discern those moments and understand where they're playing out in your life, you will make different decisions and you'll understand happiness is something that can be very arbitrary, but it's absolutely incumbent upon you and your perspective of it. And this is why I felt it was important to say, hey guys, we need to have a really serious, salient conversation about happiness. Okay, so when we talk about the anatomy of happiness, something else I want you to think about is life satisfaction is a big piece. And it's interesting because I'm going to post a couple different articles about happiness that are worth the read on myakai.com, because some of these articles got directly into pursuing happiness can actually be negative because people tend to look past the everyday simple things, looking for the grander, bigger things, or assuming that happiness is this continuous fabric that has no breaks. And because they're so busy pursuing something big and monumental, they miss out on the building blocks of what happiness is, and their lives often end up in more misery. There's whole studies that have been dedicated to understanding the pursuit of happiness and how, as much as we assume it's supposed to be 100% all good and positive, careful how you handle your pursuit of it, because it can end up jading your whole idea what happiness is. So it's about those life expectations, but it's really about satisfaction within it. And there's different degrees of satisfaction when you talk about types of happiness. So before we get into kind of the wheel that explains this, I want to talk about the two types of happiness that exist. The first type of happiness that we want the most of is called hedonia, which is happiness is derived from pleasure. So it's all those things that you really enjoy doing, whether it's golfing, going vacation, maybe it's watching The Mandalorian. I'm not going to tell you, I ain't going to lie about that. I had pure joy every time Grogu came on the screen. My face lit up like a Christmas tree, a simple pleasure. I'm not the only person, by the way, who feels that way. But real talk, it's, hedonia is about pleasure. It's about the things that really kind of, bring you to a space of joy and contentment and even sometimes excitement. Think about people who legitimately, I'm going to be funny. I mean, I would go to have conversations the next day with people who were watching The Mandalorian. And the funny thing is, I watched everybody's face. And we were excited, like talking about past Star Wars, like what this meant. And we were just really like exchanging. And there was an energy there. Energy is another thing that is so important. And I realize it's another episode I have to have, because I don't think people really understand energy and what that means. It's such a general word that has so much meaning to it in your everyday life and existence, and it exchanges with other people. So when you talk about, the idea of hedonia, happiness is derived from pleasure. So the things that you seek out to do that legitimately you find happiness within them, they bring you those different range of emotions that we'll talk about. Wilburn ties in, he kind of chimes in and says, yeah, because I went years without joy, even though I had moments of being happy. Yes. And that's what's interesting. But the question is, I would love to ask you, Wilburn, is though you went years without joy, but you had moments of happiness, what were you seeking, and what was it supposed to look and feel like for you? Because sometimes we don't ask ourselves that question, like, what does happiness really look like for me? Because we're so often letting other people be the architect of our lives. And the moments of maybe joy or happiness that we experience are often incumbent upon our interactions with other people, not from within ourselves. Remember, everything about Maya, my ambition, your ambition, is about you are the source of everything that is you. That doesn't come from the outside. And that's a shift that a lot of people struggle with, is making themselves the source of all that is them and not finding their meaning outside of themselves. So I would say, well, hey, if you went years without joy, but you had moments of happiness, why is that? Because those are the kind of questions that you do have to start to ask yourself. So when we talk about types of happiness, there's hedonia. The opposite, that would be anhedonia, where you find no pleasure. Often when we look at people who struggle with depression, and we kind of look at symptoms and signs specifically to be able to diagnose you. We look at frequency and consistency of symptoms. Like, one of them is no longer finding pleasure and joy in the things that you were once taking part in. It's called anhedonia. It's the opposite of that. And so that's one of the things that we kind of look at if we're looking at, mood swings and depression and things of that nature. On the opposite side, another type of happiness that exists is happiness, which is called eudaimonia, which is happiness which is derived from seeking virtue and meaning from things. So it's not so much about pleasure within actions you do. It's kind of like being involved in outside things and seeing how your efforts impact the world. So if I was going to give you kind of a view, I love anything that can be a visual. and can be a wheel of explanation. I would tell you there's a wheel of explanation for this, because this will probably put these two things into greater perspective for you. So when you talk about this, here's a wheel that talks about types of happiness. So in the center is kind of like happiness is this wheel that has different components to it. Now, I know if you're just listening, obviously you can't see this, but I'm going to explain it all to you. So think of drawing 3 circles on a page, and they all have to overlap. Where they overlap in that middle is that's that source of happiness. And there's 3 ways that you can gather happiness within these 3 circles. There's first what's like the pleasant life, enjoying daily pleasures. That would be Adonia. Like I said, whether it's playing golf, whether it might be working out. Some people legitimately enjoy working out, like it's their thing. They get into it. It may be cooking. Some people truly enjoy cooking. It's not a task for them. It's something they enjoy. It might be painting. You may be like our musical muse Miriam. It might be music. That may be where you derive pleasure in the pleasant life. And then there's the other circle, which is that meaningful life, contributing to the greater good. So this might be something where you find happiness, for instance, in, let's say your job frequently has like coat drives or food banks, or you go spend time working at your local food bank and donating, or things of that nature. You're always helping someone. I know a person who religiously goes and spends her time working at an animal shelter because she finds legitimate pleasure in being able to help that shelter maintain, as well as to work with those animals that don't have, obviously at that time, an owner. So she derives a lot of happiness and joy from that. That's that meaningful life. And then you have that good life. It's that third circle, using skills for enrichment. And this is one where most people probably would struggle with to a degree, because what this ultimately means is that using your skills for enrichment. So if you are legitimately blessed with something, and you can help other people, or you do something within your job, you have a job that really works to use your strengths and your skills and your God-given talents. That's the good life. This is why work is often not a source of happiness for a lot of people, because they're legitimately not doing the things that gets into that side of the wheel. It's not that good life piece for them. They're not living to their expectations of their talents and their skills. They feel they're wasting away. So those are the 3 components. And I would tell you, if you're evaluating that, and you should, because part of the episode is evaluate where you're at in those 3 wheels. But the key thing is, what you must always understand, and I said it earlier, is that happiness is not fixed. It's mutable. It's shifting. It's changing. So real life, you might right now be in your pleasant life happy. Everything is going good. You got great relationships. Let's say, you're finally back into the weather's breaking. You get to go golfing. So everything in that life seems great to you. Let's just say you're philanthropic, or you're doing things and you're volunteering your time and you feel like you're doing something good, but maybe your work life is the area that really brings you the least amount of happiness. So understanding, even within those respective spheres of happiness, they're not all going to be weighted equally. And that's one of the things in life that people need to understand, is that everything in life is not weighted equally. It's not meant to be that way. It's great if you can strike the balance, but there may every now and then be a shift in how it happens. Thank you, Roburn, for chiming in again. He says, I don't look to others for happiness. I was caught up in my depression cycle. Yes. And that's where that finding happiness and joy is really compromised when people truly struggle with depression. Thank you for sharing that, because having that type of vulnerability and transparency, that's a growth point that I know you didn't get from me, but I'm glad you're willing to share it, because that's that big step forward of saying, I can admit I suffered from depression, and it's always, like you said, it's a combination of things, certainly. Absolutely. So thank you for weighing in and sharing. And you as well, if you want to share, just comment, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you make your comment and boom, I can share it with the listening audience. So I always love when people share their experiences. So the key thing that you really have to begin to understand about happiness is that you're trying to strike a balance with it, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be fair, balanced, and even. And that's why people, I think, don't get it. Like, why am I happy today? Real talk. You might, like yesterday, I would have told you my happiness was like a 9.5, maybe a 10. The sun was finally out, fresh air, sunshine. I am a daughter of Ra. I am a child of Viracocha. I love the sun. Love being in the sun. My entire mood shifts. Often you hear of people having seasonal affective disorder, which is when they get a latch of like fresh air, sunshine, it's cold outside, you're kind of more inside than outside. Some people have bouts of depression during those times. It's seasonally related. So I wouldn't say I have seasonal affective disorder necessarily, but I get to a point where I get tired of being inside, and not to mention I'm in a place where I work where there's no windows. So I'm inside all the time, even when it's nice outside. And now we're in daylight saving time. By the time I get off work, pretty much the sun is pretty much setting. So yesterday to be off, and for it, one, to not be cold outside, but two, the sun was shining for a good portion of the day, and three, there was fresh air. I was absolutely just happy. It was like a great day. Now today was a little different, but I kind of think I can attribute to what the issues were. But day to day, your happiness, it shifts. It's not the same. And what I need people to understand is you always must put your situation that's going on in front of you, because maybe you're great and feeling happy one day, and then the next day you're not. It doesn't mean you're an unhappy person. Sometimes unhappy situations can go a day, a week, a month. If you're not careful, it can go a year. If you're not using your emotional intelligence to address what's going on in your life, and also being a strong self-advocate, because that's the other piece. You can identify what's going on and do nothing about it. And hence, you're not facilitating as you should to be a self-advocate, which means you're not fully getting that type of happiness you should. And people have different reasons for why they can't do it. So let's talk about ways that we experience happiness, because there's different words that I think people think are synonymous with happiness, and to a degree, they are, out of fairness. You may hear words like, joy. And that's a relative word that often is used, and it's a feeling in that present moment. Joy is more of like a present moment description. So, it might be you had to take a test, and you take the test and you've been waiting to know what the grade if you passed, and you get the grade, and that moment you're like, boom, hell yeah, that's joy. Because in the moment you're in it, you're enjoying it. Joy is very like in the moment, and that's how we would distinguish it out. So you may have varying moments of joy throughout your life, because joy often tied to events and situations. So maybe you just finished working on your bachelor's, your master's. Maybe you just had your first child and that it finally arrives and there's joy. So that's what joy is. It's really tied to situations and events. It's being present and in the moment. Then you have excitement. Excitement is one of those things that's like a happy feeling that involves looking forward to something. So it might be, for instance, I'm planning a trip to go to Fiji. I can't wait. I'm not planning a trip to Fiji, but if I was, I'd be excited because I love to travel. Travel is like one of my big passions. I've been like to 20 countries now. And so I love to travel. I love experiencing other cultures. And I like really immersing myself in culture. Like I don't like to be a tourist. I like to get as close to the culture as I can. So I do a lot of like research before I go, things I want to see, places I can get into. I'm always going to maximize my experience when I'm in another country. I totally enjoy doing that. So for me, it's that excitement. So it's a buildup. So whether it's, let's say, the excitement of, it's your graduation day, you get to walk across the stage. This is why so many people struggled with the end of like last year when, seniors into their senior year. That's a big moment. There's joy and excitement to know like, I'm done, I'm moving on. And that was taken from them. And there's a struggle because it was a life event that had significance and meaning. It was like one of those changing of the guard moments. And so a lot of individuals, especially high school seniors, let's be honest, if you were, let's say graduating from college, I finished my master's. We didn't have our ceremony, but that was like my third degree. So I was like, well, I've already done it twice. So I know the feeling and it doesn't make me feel any less accomplished because I didn't get to do it. But for some people, that's kind of like the superlative. It's like the icing on the cake. It's the cherry on top. And so to not have it, it was difficult for people. Thank you for tuning in, Brandy Harris. She said, oh my God, speaking of tests, yes, I'm still celebrating. That's right. You keep celebrating because that's a word that's going to come up a little bit later in the show. Enjoy and celebrate your successes. And a lot of people don't know how to do that. Every small thing you do is a success and you should embrace it because it becomes the building block to bigger things. So different types of happiness. There's joy we talked about. There's excitement. There's also gratitude. And this was something for a while with me. I used to always look at people who would do this and go, who are like really, truly thankful. When people say things like, I'm just thankful I woke up 6 feet up above ground. I used to look at someone and go, We always wake up. No, we don't always wake up. Everybody doesn't always wake up. So gratitude is that thing. It's a positive emotion. And note, these are all positive emotions that involves being thankful and appreciative. And we probably should learn to be more thankful and appreciative of the little things, because then the richness of happiness in your life is bigger. Because if all you do is thinking about the big things, so like Brandy Harris just mentioned, like she's still celebrating from passing her test. And by the way, you go, girl. But some people only can think about walking across the stage and getting that diploma. And for them, that's where the real source of their happiness. But think about all the work you have to do to be able to achieve that. If you fail at any of those small markers along the way, you don't get to walk the stage. And that's why I want people to start celebrating their small successes. Have gratitude. Be appreciative of your moments, of the small things in your life. So yes, you know what? If you're trying to work out and lose weight, hey, there's going to be times, and God knows I can attest to this, there'll be weeks, months where I nail it and I will just fall off for like a month. Like this has been my fall off month. And I'm like, okay, Maya, I got to get back on track. That's not going to take me away from the fact of what my goal is, because I've achieved a lot of milestones in this journey. And the thing is, when I achieved them, like I had a straight week of working out 7 days a week, or I did this, or I did that. I noted, and I was really thankful for the fact that I was able to do those things and celebrated them. Another form of ways that we can experience happiness is pride. And this is one that can probably be a double-edged sword, because too much of something turns into prideful, right? But pride in its simplest form, I would describe it as that positive emotion where it's satisfaction in something that you've accomplished. So you take pride in yourself. So you know what? It's kind of like you set that goal that, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds. And if I lose 10 pounds, then I'm going to go buy myself those new pair of jeans that I wanted. You know, you take pride in that. And you ever notice, and you see this when people, and I think weight loss is a good example, people who struggle with their weight and they finally get on a plan and they're setting their goals, tell me you don't see the inner light that shines from them. They have a pride. Because especially if it's something they have always struggled with, and if it's something that's been the Achilles heel, if it's something that's always made them unhappy, if they always felt not good enough, if they had low self-esteem, when they start hitting those milestones and losing the weight, the sense of pride they have, they feel more attractive, they feel more accepted. And you hear people tell you how their life changed when they lost weight, how all of a sudden they were more attracted to people and got invited to do more things. And they're aware of the fact how the world had kind of ostracized them because they weren't deemed to be socially acceptable because of their weight. So you often see people who struggle with weight loss really have a strong sense of pride when they achieve that goal. Pride's an important part, but it should never turn into being prideful, where you lose sight of being appreciative and embracing your accomplishments, and you assume that things should be given to you because, or someone owes you something because. The world doesn't work like that. Another way we experience happiness is optimism. And this is another dimension of happiness that people often don't think about. Optimism in this sense would be pretty much saying that it's a way we look at life in a positive way. It's kind of an upbeat outlook, because you can get thrown a curveball at any point of time. And if your energy is not right, if you don't have a sense of optimism, like, I know the good comes with the bad, and the thing is, there's going to be more good than bad, but I got to be ready when the bad likes to creep up and come and get me, and you just can't fold. I just had this conversation with a client yesterday where she had been thrown a curveball for a lot. She was struggling with her health. Her family wasn't supportive, but yet they would always come to her for stuff. So she was the rock, and she felt used and abused and kind of said, I just don't want to do this anymore. I just rather not be here. And I was like, well, hold up. And she had 3 kids. And I was like, well, hold up. Pump the brakes, sis. What's up? And we really sat down and we pulled apart. And within that, there wasn't enough self-love and appreciation. And there clearly was no self-advocacy. I'm going to tell you that. But her optimism was so bleak because she felt so under duress with all the people that she felt didn't care about her. She was looking from the outside for the difference, not from the inside. And when I said that to her, like, you know, you're looking for somebody else to give you the answer to how to solve your problems when the answer has always been in you. And she looked at me like, what? And I said, you are the answer. I said, if you want people to stop taking you for granted, stop giving them reason to take you for granted. And she looked at me like, oh, okay. You know, and we started having this really salient conversation. And she had a small shift. And I'm not saying in that conversation I changed her life, but I gave her something to think about and to make some changes in how she was doing things. So your optimistic look about life itself, if you're looking through that glass half full situation, chances are every time something bad happens, or you're always anticipating something bad is going to happen, that's not healthy for you. It's got to be the glass is pretty much half full. And that, guess what? It can be replenished at any point of time. Because if I partake of the glass, at some point, it's going to probably be half full. I am the one can refill it and keep it either full or half full. If you partake of the drink in the glass, at some point, is it not going to be half full or almost empty? And at times in life, if we become that vessel, if we're that glass, we can feel empty. But it doesn't mean that we can't fulfill that glass with something more, that we now feel whole and complete again. Because life is a cycle that keeps going. You're going to have your peaks and your valleys. And the question is, when you're coming down, headed towards a valley, are you skiing and you're ready to go up? Or are you ready to climb? Or are you like, oh my God, here comes a valley. I can't do it. Or you're like, oh, here comes a valley. I got to get ready. Here's my plan. It's all about perspective and optimism. And that final way experience happiness would be contentment. And that's a word that can be great or dangerous, because I always don't want people to confuse content with comfort zone, because they are two different things. By the way, there's an episode about comfort zones that's fully worth listening to. I think it might be 19, but I'm not sure. I keep saying I'm an inventory of my episodes. It's like when I say it, I reference it. I can tell you go back and listen to episode 19. But of course, if you go to Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition, guess what? MA.YA.com, right there on my podcast. If you subscribe to my YouTube channel, M.A.Y.A, then all the episodes are right there in order. So then you don't have to, look too hard for it. You can just kind of scroll down. But the thing about contentment, which is really so important, it's a type of happiness that involves a sense of satisfaction. But being satisfied doesn't mean you're settling. Because at some point, even when you're content, you will want more. But when it becomes being stuck in your comfort zone is you feel you want more, but you're a little bit lazy about kind of pursuing the more, because it might be more work, or there might be risk, or the dreadful, I don't know what might be out there if I step out my comfort zone. So don't confuse contentment with a comfort zone. Contentment, I'm satisfied where I'm at right now. So for instance, I finished my degree, I'm pursuing other things, but I'm not content where I am, because there's more things I need to do. So I'm working towards moving towards that next goal for me. At one point, I was content where I was, but I've grown, I've changed, and I've definitely expanded my skill sets. So I'm ready to take that next step. So just because I'm no longer happy with where I am doesn't mean I'm miserable. It means I see the shift and the need and the space of where my happiness has taken me. I've grown. And a lot of people struggle with, remember I said happiness is not fixed. It's mutable. So as you grow, change, and evolve and have new experience, or maybe a new person comes into your life and exposes you to something you never thought twice about, and you go, man, I've been missing out. That's okay. Because as we say, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And you can't spell challenge without change. Those little 3 extra letters, LLE, look, listen, evaluate, and then engage. That's the key thing. And this is what happiness is all about. So those are different ways that we experience happiness: joy, contentment, gratitude, excitement, all those kind of things. They're different ways. And they're very similar, because if you notice, the common thread with all of those things is when we say positivity. They're all rooted in positivity. And that's what a lot of people miss when they struggle with happiness, is seeing the positive sides of most things in life. Because I'll be honest, if you've been in a sense of abuse all the time, then realistically, it might be hard for you to even understand or be able to embrace happiness. And that's more work. So I'm not going to say, oh, you're going to flip this switch and all of a sudden it's going to be like happy. No, there's no happy pill. Because if it was, we all be taking it. And some people think there's a happy pill out there. It's not. And that's a whole nother story. So I won't get into that. Drug abuse or self-medicating is not a form of treatment, FYI. Even though it's easy to do. It's an easy situation, but it's never the answer. And you usually complicate or quantify the situation more than you need to. So those are ways you experience happiness. Let's talk about how, if you're happy. Let that sit for a second. You're happy. If I just said that happiness is not, it's not fixed, it's mutable, it's shifting, then how can you really determine if you're happy? And I said, it's about striking a balance. And we talked about the 3 dimensions of it: the pleasant life, the meaningful life, and the good life. Those are ways that can be the way you can start to assess where you at in each one of those domains with your happiness. So there are some key signs that you're happy. They might include feeling like you're living a life you wanted. So let's say right now, you have a job you like, you're married, you've got kids. And by the way, none of this means it's perfect. It means overall, you feel gratitude and you have moments of joy within those situations. Those are the varying degrees that can help you figure out if you're happy in those areas. So, but overall, you feel like you're living the life that you wanted. Now, we're not all going to 100% feel like this is it. I'm living my life like I'm golden. No, not always. Every day is not golden. Okay. But you should feel more on the upside, that you're closer to being where you wanted to be in life than where you don't want to be. And if you're right now saying, well, I was this age and I thought I'd be doing this. Okay, well, we don't always hit every single benchmark goal we set for ourselves. But I'd ask you where you stand right now, because it's so important being in the present more than anything else. And people struggle with that. But I would ask you where you're at right now, not where you want to be, where you're at. How do you feel about it? Do you find some joy? Are you happy? Because maybe you got taken down a different road that took you down a different path than you expected. But are you grateful? Do you feel content at times? Have you had joy? Or has it been absolutely like the worst experience you feel like you've ever had? So one sign that you can know you're happy is that you do feel like you're living a life that you want. Maybe not you thought you'd have, but it's a new situation that happened and you like what you have. Feeling that the conditions of your life are good. So let's be honest. I think the pandemic has put this in perspective for a lot of people, that, you know what, a lot of people struggled with work. They lost their jobs, or their hours got reduced, or maybe one person in their household lost their jobs. Let's be honest, you had kids that couldn't go to school and they're e-learning and they're really struggling with that. And so, it's something that they don't know how to navigate. So the pandemic has really challenged people on levels that they never stopped to reflect on their life this way. That's why I said this has been the biggest teaching moment in your life you'll ever have, because what you got to learn about yourself in 2020, rolling into 2021, can help you to really begin to understand how to make the changes to get to being happy legitimately. But it's work for some people. It's going to be work more so than others. We're not all on the same playing field. We are not, and we never will be. So throw that idea out the window. Life is not fair. We knew that coming out of kindergarten. So the question is, what are you doing with the cards you dealt? And you know what? Are you willing to change your hand and play the game? And for a lot of people, that makes them uneasy. I don't want to play the game. Well, then you're going to be exactly where you're at, because life, unfortunately, is going to throw things at you, and either you're ready to catch it and throw it back, and stand for what means something to you. And a lot of people they've never been in that position, so they don't know how to do it. So I'm going to say it's a process. But there are people who can guide you through that process if you feel you can't go alone. Whether you're in therapy, whether you seek out a life coach, one of the things I'm adding to my table, because I think life coaching is fantastic, because some people don't need just talk therapy. They've done that. They need a bit more guidance and structure. So I feel that, life coaching is huge. And I'm also a recovery coach. So people who are struggling with substance abuse, they need more of a structure like they get often when they're they're inpatient in their residential program, 28, 30 days, and they get out and they feel lost because now guess what? The safety net's gone. The support is gone. So you might need something extra that's going to help you to be able to figure out what those conditions are and how to achieve them. Some other things to consider if you're happy, also take in consideration is, do you feel that you have accomplished or will accomplish what you want in life? Now, we're not all meant to accomplish everything at one time. We often have different life paths. We start out one way and end up taking a detour. Detours can be having children, getting married, getting divorced, loss of a loved one. You lose your job, and all of a sudden what you were doing is that the job market has shifted, and you don't feel now your skill sets make you competent enough to be competitive. A lot of people with ageism feel like, wow, my company pretty much phased out my position. Great, I got a severance, but I still need to work. But I feel like I'm in a position where, what am I supposed to do? So do you feel accomplished, or do you feel you can accomplish what you want in life? And if you're saying more no to that than yes, then you've got some things to work on. And finally, do you feel more positive than negative in your life, daily life, not just overall? Do you have more ups than you do downs? And ups doesn't mean you're always going to be at the peak all the time. You may be midway through the mountain, because life sometimes puts you there. And maybe you climb up a bit more and you come down, and sometimes you hit the peak. And guess what? There's another peak you got to climb, because you've met an expectation and a goal, you're content, but you want to keep growing. So that's the thing about life, is constantly challenging yourself and being okay with things when they change, because those changes can be equally as good for you as often we think negative. So when you're constantly thinking negative, that's something you have to evaluate, because We talked about optimism. And if you're more negative than positive, that means you're never seeing the possibility that really can exist in your life because you're always expecting the worst opposed to the best can be part of the dynamic as well. So let's have a real talk time. We only did one show. We had one toolbox moment. We're going to do one real talk time. Happy people still feel a whole range of human emotions. They feel anger, frustration, boredom, loneliness, and even sadness. I talked about this a bit earlier in the show. So I don't want you to think by any means when I say this, like the song Happy by Pharrell. Everyone's not like that all the time. We don't all walk around with the soundtrack of Happy from Pharrell playing in our heads. We all have struggles. We get angry. Life is not always going to work to our advantage. We can be frustrated. Sometimes we just get bored where we are. We get lonely. We get sad. Everybody experiences those range of emotions at some point in their life. So don't think that because you're happy and positive thinking that all of a sudden a curveball won't come at you. That can also have you experience these things. But what becomes important is understanding what to do with it. I love this saying. And when I read it, I said, I got to share this in the show. Having such high standards for achieving happiness, people don't appreciate the small, simple things that are really meaningful in life, and they are more unhappy as a result. That's M.A.Y.A. And that's why I said earlier, I want people to start thinking more about everyday successes, celebrating everyday successes, and not always thinking grandiose and large and the big picture. Because within the big picture is all the details. That kind of can't see the forest for the trees thing. But think about what I just said. In every picture you look at, what makes that picture exceptional is the details. Think about the Mona Lisa. You look at the Mona Lisa as a picture by Da Vinci, but it's the details that makes it so unique that people question this brushstroke and was this changed? It's the details of our lives that make it rich and meaningful, not the overall big picture. But if all you're shooting for is a big picture, you're going to constantly miss all the things that will help you to really, truly be happy. So if I have to throw out there, how can you pursue happiness in your daily life? There's 6 simple ways. This article is going to be on the website as well. And this is some of the things we talked about. 1, practice gratitude. I can't tell you how much practicing gratitude is important. I put it up there twice. I wanted to keep rolling. Practice gratitude, practice gratitude. Wake up every day. And when you wake up, think of something you're thankful for, because daily affirmations are something that can really help coach yourself into having that positive attitude that maybe you're struggling with. So waking up to a positive affirmation and being grateful can be good. So when you wake up, you may be like, I'm grateful because today is my off day. This is a day that I get to do things for me. I would tell you on the flip side too, before you go to bed at night, think about something that you're grateful for. And it may require that you kind of comb through your day, but I guarantee you'll find something simple, because this is what we want you to start to connect to. It's the simple things. I want you to connect to the simple things. When I say us, I mean you and me, but I want you to connect to the simple things and be thankful for them. 2, do things you enjoy. So often we spend so much of our time doing busy work, doing things at work, doing things for other people, and we don't find that time to create that joy for ourselves. So find and do things on a regular basis. I'm going to tell you, we talk about self-care. This would tie into self-care. Do things you enjoy. So when the weather breaks nice, you know what? If you can get a golf game in, get a couple golf games in, and don't feel guilty that you took the time to do something for yourself. If you see something you want to buy and you've been working hard, go buy it for yourself. Now, I'm not saying become wasteful and put yourself in debt. Like, I'm not going to just run out and go buy my Tesla. I have to go earn my Tesla, but it would be a very, very joyful moment when I have it. But I have other things that I feel I need to achieve first before I do that. But don't be afraid to give yourself the things that make you happy, just as you would so easily give it to someone else. People often will give their children, their significant others. Sometimes they give to them friends. They'll give to everybody else before they give to themselves, and they feel guilty for it. I want you to stop that. I want you to learn to love your job, especially if you hate your job. And I'm going to tell you something. Employment can be a sense of angst that people do not understand. And I took this in consideration because I have a job that can be stressful for different reasons. And I took this mindset one day. I said, it's so easy to fall into that vacuum of negativity that can exist at my job at times because people are frustrated. I said, I'm going to take a day and pull myself away from that. And you know something? When I focus just on the scope of only my job and kind of shut out all the clutter that could be filled with negativity, I found it was a much better day. But I'm going to tell you something. It was work. But learning to enjoy your job is important. And if you can't enjoy it, learning to find something that you can, or maybe you need to start making career moves. 4, celebrate often the successes that you have in life. So you passed that test, you were hoping something was going to come through and it came through better than you thought. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. I'm not saying you got to go overboard with it, but acknowledge it. So I want you to start to acknowledge the small things that you accomplished. So even if someone maybe isn't patting yourself on the back for something you figured out, be like, hey, I got that. That was, I figured that out. That was good. It can be that simple. I'm not saying you got to get a marching band and balloons and go overboard, but to yourself mentally, give yourself that mental pat on the back. Build better self-confidence. Don't always second guess what you think you can't do. Give yourself credit for what your solid skill sets are. It's like knowing your strengths and weaknesses and working towards your strengths and addressing your weaknesses so you can shore them up and don't feel inadequate because something you're not good at. We're not going to know everything, but we can figure out ways to be better at what we do. So you can be confident when you step into something, saying, okay, I feel confident with what I know. It's always be confident in what you know and stop trying to act like you don't know something, because that's when you leave yourself vulnerable to things and you usually end up looking like a fool or making a mistake because you're trying to kind of harness the thing that's not meant for you to harness it because you haven't put the work into it. Now, if you want to put that into your toolbox, then do the work to put it in there. But don't own something. Don't fake it till you make it. I told you, I'm against that. Be who you are in the moment. And if you're good at this, it's this. But if that over there is what people want and you don't have it, don't act like you got it, but go get the skill set so then you can have it. That's key. And lastly, dream big. People stop dreaming. We give up so easily on what our dreams are. Oh, I can't achieve that. Who said you can't achieve it? You don't know you can't achieve it until you try and you fail. And most people in life who achieved amazing things like Edison and so forth, guess what, people? He didn't figure out how to make the light bulb in the first try. He had lots of epic failures. In fact, Tesla, FYI, who did the 1930s World Fair, the White City, is actually the one who came up and won that bid over Edison and GE and all kinds of other people. So dream big. Don't second guess yourself. And that's a key thing about happiness. See all the components that go into this. So here's my final thought. Happiness, as I've said repeatedly, is not fixed. It is mutable. It's shifting. And if you struggle with finding it or maintaining it, ask yourself why. Think back to when you really experienced happiness. You will find the answers. So for me, I found 3 things that told me where my happiness sits. I like when life was simple. Yeah, kind of being younger with less responsibilities and bills was a beautiful thing. But I liked simplicity. I had better happiness when I was truly connected to people that I had things in common with, opposed to people that I don't have things in common with. So for me, I realized that feeling connected is a source of happiness for me. And the other piece was having to take burdens that I particularly don't care for really play into making me unhappy. So I realized the simple things in life bring me joy, and connecting with people I see value who bring great energy, you can never second guess. So for you, you now have to go back and retool your life and figure out, when I was happy, why was I happy? And what have I now sacrificed or given up that puts me in this state of flux where I don't often feel happy? Remember, strike your balance. Every day is not going to be amazing, but it can still be good. All right. So that's episode 30, the enigma of the pursuit of happiness. So with that being said, let's shift gears from the back end of the show. We're going to bring on our musical muse, Miriam.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So thoughts on the enigma of the pursuit of happiness. Have you ever thought about it in that context?
No, honestly, I haven't. I was sitting back trying to think about my 3 things, my 3 happy things.
We know music.
Yeah, music for sure. I do love just simplicity in my life as well. Just like, not a bunch of extravagance, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Just, the simple things make me happy. So I was like, okay, after the show, I'm going to go sit down in a notebook and I'm going to write about it. And I'm just going to meditate on it and it's going to be fantastic.
And all of a sudden a song is going to come out of it.
Yes. Oh, for sure. It always does. I'm always thinking of something. I'm like, oh my God, that could be a song.
It's going to be a
Like
song.
Miriam, not everything has to be a song, but it does.
But
for
why not?
me.
That's
Yeah,
your point,
that's true.
but that's your happiness. That's your
That's true.
expression. So yes, that's how you get to get your words out there. So tell us about, this is actually the fourth song we're featuring from the EP.
Mhm.
Tell us a bit about this song.
So this like kind of ties into, I feel like, it was just about me being in a dark place in my life and reflecting on how my mother raised me. And the song is, so it's called Mama Ain't Raised No. There is an explicit in it because you know the saying Mama ain't raised no bitch. So that is what the song is based off of, and just reflecting back on my mom and how she always wanted me to fight for everything and to try hard in life, as most mothers do. And so, yeah, I wrote a song about it, and
All
I
right.
love it very much.
All right. Well, without further ado, this is the fourth single from your EP, Heart of Gold. Mama Ain't Raised No Beep.
Yeah. It's going to be in the song, so cover your ears if you don't like that.
Here we go.
How come every day I'm closer to dying? People all around me, they're trying. I can barely sit up and get out of bed. Oh mama, what do I expect? I don't put in work. The glass is half full, but I'm dying of thirst. Everything that's wrong is just in my head. I'm not trying at all. Please forgive me if I fall. 'Cause mama ain't raised no, mama ain't raised no, mama ain't raised no, mama ain't raised no bitch. If I fall then I'll get up again. 'Cause mama ain't raised no. I'm not trying, but I won't be down for long. Ooh, she made me strong. 'Cause mama ain't raised no bitch. My mind races over and over. What happens if I fail, or will I get closer? Maybe it's best to not try at all. 'Cause I'm a dog who lost my fight, or maybe it's my bones. I'm so achy all the time. What happens if I just don't? I don't wanna feel the pain, 'cause I feel it all the time. But I wanna make you proud, so I'm gonna try. I'm not trying at all. Please forgive me if I fall. 'Cause mama ain't raised no, mama ain't raised no, mama ain't raised no, mama ain't raised no bitch. If I fall then I'll get up again. 'Cause mama ain't raised no. I'm not trying, but I won't be down for long. Ooh, she made me strong. 'Cause mama ain't raised no. It took me forever to get this right. More than 40 days and 40 nights. And all the roadblocks in my sights were so hard to get over. I almost forgot to have fun. My perfectionist said we weren't done. But I'm the person who finally won. And she's the angel on my shoulder. And mama ain't raised no bitch.
All right. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it works with, it does work with the theme. It's about accountability,
Yeah.
and owning the fact that everything isn't going good, but if I'm going to have a shift in that, then it's up to me to do the things I need to do.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Makes me emotional every time I hear that song, but it's a good one.
That means
Yes.
it came from the heart. Yes.
Yes, it did. It did.
I know that we got one more song left because you had a
Yes.
5 single EP. So of
Yes.
course everybody can find your EP. Tell them where they can find it.
You can find my EP on all streaming platforms under Miriam McQueen. Just look me up. You'll find me. I am the only one as far as I know. And you can find me on www.miriammcqueen.com. Also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all under Miriam McQueen.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, obviously, we will see you next week for the 5th and final song off your EP.
Yes, I'm excited.
I'm excited. All right. You have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
All righty. Everybody, that is Miriam McQueen. She is the M.A.Y.A musical muse. As part of what I want to do this year, or even my podcast, will start to integrate music into the show because I love music. It's expressive. I think songwriters always seem to know what we're thinking and feeling all the time. You can always find a song that resonates with how you're feeling in some situation. I don't care who it is. So that's why I love bringing music on board. As I shared Sesame Street earlier, and I guarantee you for some people, you were all bobbing your heads like, yeah, that's a happy moment. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in to episode 30 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. It was the enigma of the pursuit of happiness. So hopefully you took something from this and realized it's not always an easy thing to achieve in happiness because it's not always fixed, but it's something that you can definitely harness. It's about perspective of how you look at things. So make sure you listen to episodes of M.A.Y.A at myakai.com. Of course, like I said, if you happen to have your your podcast platform of choice, I'm not going to tell you not to listen because you can find me on iTunes, Google, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Now I'm on Amazon Audibles. So there's so many different ways you can connect with the show. Also, I would ask you right now, call to action, subscribe to my YouTube channel, M.A.Y.A Akai. And of course, get social with me as well. You can always find me on Twitter and Instagram, M.A.Y.A_Akai, as well as on Facebook on M.A.Y.A Akai Presents. Please share the podcast because you might find someone that can connect with this, that was struggling with something. And though maybe this might be an episode maybe you didn't get from it, you might find, especially right now in the pandemic, people who are struggling with the simple concept of happiness. It's not as simple as we think, but we can definitely make it more accessible. It's based on our perspective. So thank you to everybody to tuning in. Remember, like I always say, that your present is your past and your future is no more. So it is so important to live every single day to the fullest. And hopefully by now, everyone's starting to dissect that when I say it. FYI, you can now unbuckle. We have now landed and you can get comfortable. And hopefully you'll come back and enjoy another ride. Bye-bye.
Get inspired, get motivated with M.A.Y.A Akai and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find M.A.Y.A on Twitter and Instagram at M.A.Y.A_Akai. On Facebook at M.A.Y.A Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything M.A.Y.A at MAYAAkai.com.